In this lecture, we're going to look at the CC CAT exam. When you take your CC test on the CAT platform, you'll have 2 hours to answer between 100 and 125 questions. And CAT is short for Computerized Adaptive Testing. Really what that means is, if you answer a difficult question right, you get a question that is more difficult, but also worth more points. If you answer a question wrong, you get a question that is easier, but also worth less points. And that really continues all the way throughout the exam. Right answer, harder question. Wrong answer, easier question. And the trick here is, get as many of the hard questions right, obviously, but also spend more time on the first 10 to 20 questions, because the more of those you get right, the harder questions you get, the more points you get per question, and you raise the CAT curve up to a point where you need to answer less questions right to pass the exam, because each question is worth more points. As of October 1st, 2025, anyone who takes the CC certification can only test on the CAT platform. One of the things that is different from the CAT platform to the previous test is you can no longer review answers, which sort of makes sense, right? The way the CAT platform works is when you answer that question right, then you get a harder question. But if you then go back to 3 questions prior and change the answer, well, that's just going to mess up the engine, because every question you've gotten since that question has been based on the right or the wrong answers you had earlier. So no marking for review and no option to go back and change answers. I still think that's a good thing. You don't have to sit and think about on question 53, was that really the answer? You can't go back, it's in the past. Forget about it. Focus on the question you're actually on now. On the exam, you're going to get 25 beta questions. They don't count towards your score. They are only used by ISC2 to see how well they perform, and they may include them in future tests. If you get them right, it doesn't matter. If you get them wrong, it also doesn't matter. You can't see which questions are beta questions. They are randomly dispersed in the first 100 questions. Let's say you pass on question 100, and out of those 100, 25 are beta questions. So really, you only needed to answer 75, or in actuality, enough weighted questions correctly out of those 75 to pass the exam. While we don't know how the scoring works exactly, ISC2 has said you can answer as few as 50% of the questions right and still pass the exam. This is obviously assuming that you got the CAT curve right in the beginning, you answered those high point questions right. But like I said, if you get enough high point questions, as low as 50% have to be correct. The exam can stop as early as 100 questions or as late as 125. After question number 100, if the CAT engine can predict you will pass or fail with 95% certainty, well then you pass or fail. If not, it continues. Now, if you get question 101, do not panic. You are still in this. Look at your time left. If you have plenty of time, slow down. If you are low on time, do it as efficiently as you can. The test engine will do the same pass-fail calculation on each question after number 100. Now for breaks. You certainly can take them, but if you take a break for a half an hour, you now have half an hour less to finish the exam in. From the actual time you start the exam, the clock never stops until you are done, which is when you click End Exam or your time runs out. I very much suggest taking breaks, but make them short and make them efficient. When I talked about questions have a different score, the harder questions are worth more, the easier questions worth less. We don't know how they're scored, but let's say it's on a scale from 1 to 10. If you have a really difficult question, it's worth 8 points. That means that you can get 8 questions wrong that are only worth 1 point. Obviously, an extreme example, but you get the idea. So really, like I said, focus on the first 10 to 20 questions. That can help you make sure that you answer slightly more of those right than you would have if you had spent less time on them. That way, you can get harder and harder questions early on, raise the CAT curve, allowing you to answer less questions right and still pass the exam. I hope this lecture has helped you be a little bit clearer on what the CAT exam is and how to approach it. Thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next lecture.